Welcome to Still Growing in Grace, a program dedicated to inspiring joy, giving hope, and delighting in grace. I'm Mike Zenker, and I'll be sharing with you a message of hope that will expand your understanding of God's love and amazing grace. God already deeply loves you, totally accepts you, and really, really likes you. Growing in Grace Ministries Canada and Hope Fellowship, your community church, invite you to enjoy today's program as we dig deeper into what it means to be still growing in grace. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Still Growing in Grace. I'm glad you're taking time to join me. It's bright and early here in Elmira, Ontario, 8 a.m.-ish on Wednesday morning. If you're watching, make a comment. Let me know you're watching. Say hello, all that fun stuff. I got some pretty cool stuff this week and next week. We got a two-part discussion on deconstruction wisdom. And the more... Hey, good morning, Becky. Yay, Becky's watching. The more I am... going down a path, I won't call it the path of deconstruction because that's not the path we're on. I think we're on the path of discipleship. We're on a path of growing deeper in our understanding, and along the way, we learn new things. It's like in public school. You learn arithmetic, but then you move on to multiplication, and you move on to all kinds of stuff. Or you go into the sciences, or you go into geography, and you learn things you've never learned before. You learn about your physical health, how your body changes from as a teenager. Well, if you're not told, you don't know. So maybe deconstruction is about awakening to things you didn't know. I just thought of that. That's an even better lens than using the word deconstruction. And it's okay to use it. People identify with that word. But as more and better and clearer and more accurate information arises, what do you do with it? Do you toss it? Do you say, nope? Hey, Linda, good morning. Yay, Linda's watching. What do you do? Do you toss it? Do you go, no, that's just not true? I've been having discussions with folks that have continued to grow in their faith. In fact, part of the discussions was reminiscing back to when we're far more, I'll use the word legalistic, where it was about doing the rules, following it, or God won't be pleased. Those are the basic legalism rules that many of us that are watching have moved on from, or deconstructed churchianity, if you want to use that term. But there's more to this. There are deeper levels of understanding. When I first discovered my identity in Christ, it really was launched with a Bob George book and a book Grace Walk as well. And by reading these two books back to back, I, for the first time in my life, knew I was forgiven. And I had been pastoring for 7 years already, or 8 years, or even 10 years. What? I've been a pastor, went to Bible college, and still didn't know I was forgiven? That's bizarre. Can you imagine the unlearning that had to happen? Now I had to go look at all those verses that said I wasn't forgiven. I couldn't find any. But I was told that. If we have been taught a deep-seated belief or theology, it's going to be hard to receive something new. I just saw a meme from the Naked Pastor where it said something like, God is not bound by your... Actually, you know what? I'm going to look it up because I don't want to mess this one up. David Hayward, that's it. Here we go. Let me look it up. It was a really good cartoon. David Hayward. There we go. What did he write? Sorry for the slowness here. Here it is. We say the grave could not contain him, but believe our theology can. That's a great Easter one. We say the grave could not contain him, but believe our theology can. Your theology must grow. It has to keep growing. Oh my goodness. I am... Okay, then I moved on. The forgiveness was just one part. Then I started to understand New Covenant, Old Covenant. Well, that was a big leap. And then I understood. It just got deeper and deeper. And then I had to revisit end times. What? Wait a minute. End times? I was told the world's come to an end, and cheered on. Then that led me to take a deeper look at the topic of hell. That maybe it's not what we were told. Maybe there's a much deeper, more ancient perspective perspective that I was never told. Am I going to reject something because I hadn't heard it before? It sounds wrong. It's okay to then, after deep study and exploration, still reject it. That's totally different than just saying, nope, sounds wrong, and on you go. But I'm going to say, I think the Holy Spirit has us on a journey, and we're going to learn and unlearn. Don't be afraid of it. So I had a good conversation today, or this week, with Richard Murray and Bill Thrasher, and we were talking about some of the pitfalls of deconstruction. Can you overswing or overrun the bases? What does it look like? And again, the reason we're having this discussion, it seems like we're having it a few times. There's a lot of us that are struggling with watching some loved ones overrun bases and just run away willy-nilly, almost to the point of deconstructing Jesus completely, or the Bible, and say they're absolutely useless, to the point of absolute atheism. And yet individuals that have done some of that mock the church, mock believers, while still trying to be buddy-buddy. It just doesn't make sense. It's almost an attention-getting trip. I want to be more loving, and I hope that by the time you hear this conversation today, and I'm going to watch it with you because I forget some of it. Mary Nye, good morning, good coffee. Oh, yeah. Hey, I got my coffee. I am, Thank you. I love it. So, Connie, I see you're watching. If you're still watching, say hello. It's great to see you there as well. And Linda, I think you're down in Chatham Way. Okay, let's get into this conversation. This is going to be a good one. It's not that long. I think it's like 35 minutes. I'm trying to keep the programs to like 35, 40 minutes because it's really hard to watch a full hour. But I had been showing some of the forgiveness conference materials, and they were much longer. So that's my goal, to stick to a 30-minute, 35, 40-minute at the max. It's a lot easier to take in. You guys, listen in. I'm watching with you. So comment if you like something, and that'd be pretty cool. I'm listening here with you. Here we go. All right. It's been a little while since we did a recording together because we had the forgiveness conference at the beginning of the year. This is literally we did the second one. We did with Bob Engel last time too. But welcome, Richard and Bill. I'm glad you could join me today on Still Growing in Grace. And we've had some discussions recently observing friends of ours online and how they process good news, how they process bad news, the ups and downs of it. And it's just been interesting to watch, and our personalities respond differently. And I thought it'd be important to talk about, again, the term deconstruction is still really important. Some people don't like it at all, and that's okay. I'm leaning towards the term discipleship. Oh my goodness, that's all this is. Yeah, like deconstruction is a great term, but not everybody's going to like it, and it's been hijacked by evangelicals that misunderstand what it is and put their own definition on. So I don't want to be hijacked by somebody else's definition. So there is unlearning to do. I had I don't know. We'll say hello first, guys, and then we'll kind of banter back and forth. So.
Well, hello.
Brother, that was deep.
Okay. Hello first, guys.
That's
yes, for the dad jokes. We're bringing them, right?
It only gets better from here. We'll...
Oh, man. Well, so I had this experience in the last couple of years, not so much during COVID, obviously, but I've had people come to my church. I still pastor a church. I'm still in a Sunday morning church. Some people would call it traditional, and there's some tradition to it, but the content is not traditional. And so how do you merge that? And I've had people show up eager to hear a different perspective than what they grew up with or where they had been going to. They heard that Hope Fellowship's a little bit different, or Mike Zenker's a bit different. That kind of I know it's true, but it's fun when they're there because it makes me remember and hear and think through the lens of the listener, not me trying to project an agenda. And I thought, hey, maybe that's part of the problem of the deconstruction community, that they're trying to push an agenda that was never there to push. Maybe they're trying to diss something and distance themselves from their leg. Like, you can't cut off your leg, and yet they're trying to point to their toe and go, that's not me. Well, yeah, it is. Paul Young did it brilliantly. He says, those are my people. Whoa, okay, there's a humility in calling them my people and not trying to rise above and superior, but rather blend with this. These are my people. Some are weird and some are great, and what do you think? Like, I think there's something to be had about that, and that we need to at least explore a little bit. What have you guys seen?
Yeah, I fully do. I fully agree. And I'm sure we'll get into the nuances of this, but one of the things that I think humanity, and there's an individual aspect, there's almost a familial, a family aspect, and then there's almost like a corporate aspect, right? I see like three buckets, like how you progress individually is one thing, how maybe a smaller community, a family progresses is a different thing altogether. And then there's the corporate identity of the bride of Christ that's progressing even a different way, right? And they're not always three in the same place. And sometimes I think deconstruction, discipleship, growth, whatever you want to call it, is muddled in one person's interpretation of one of those things, somebody else's interpretation of another one of those things, right? And sometimes I think just a conversation like this to even just articulate, listen, the individual journey may be different than the family journey, may be different than the corporate journey. So just saying that gives people like this, oh.
So there's room for all that?
It makes a lot of sense, right? And we even see this so beautifully modeled in the scriptures, even in what I would call the Gospels and the New Testament, right? The canon. You see the individual kind of enlightening, awakening of different individuals at different points in times to different truths. You see kind of a collective movement, and then you see this corporate movement begin to establish. And the word discipleship, I'll give you my definition of disciple, because I think discipleship for me is a single phase of that. It's not that I've heard it called the entire thing, and I think there's an element of the entire thing to it, but I have a very weird definition of disciple. My definition of disciple is a very committed, yet also very confused follower of Jesus.
What? You don't have all the answers?
Well, and even confused and I mean that in like a legitimate way. If you look at the disciples pre-cross primarily and just post-cross, the first several years when they were still kind of referred to as disciples, they walked with an eschatological confusion. They were all expecting the kingdom to come to earth and be like conquering. Like they had a messianic confusion. They had a legalistic confusion. They had a lot of confusion that we still see today in individuals and in families and even corporately. And so there's a lot of discipleship that still needs to happen. These people believe in the person of Jesus. They are my people, as Paul says, right? But there's confusion. And the cool thing is, I think even scripturally speaking, those disciples ultimately, the majority of them, graduated, for lack of a better word, in maturity into apostleship. They became apostles, right? They became more grounded in the beautiful truths of Jesus and what he was unveiling about God the Father, what he was unveiling about each one of us as sons of God. And so I say sons, not men, but heirs. Mm-hmm. So I think that just and they had to unlearn a bunch of crap that left them in confusion in the Jewish legalistic mind, and then grow into this new understanding of a better revelation of God, a better covenant that has been revealed.
Well, I don't know. I kind of jump in the stream at this from a different angle, and I really agree with everything both of y'all just said, and I don't disagree with any of it. But when I look at this deconstruction thing, it's really stunning to me, because even though we might all be called deconstructionists, we couldn't be further apart. A lot of us couldn't be further apart in our theology. I mean, we're simply not, it's not the same thing. And even within, and I'm not one of those guys that thinks atheism is a good thing, you know, that it's better than false religion. I think it's just as bad. I mean, my whole belief is centered on one concept, and that is that Christ may be made preeminent in all things. If that's the stream and the direction we're going, whether it's deconstruction or whether it's not, if it's holding on to the traditional thing that blessed us, but then deconstructing the falseness out of it, you know, however you want to say it, but it crushes me to if I'm brutally honest, that so much of the problem with deconstructionists is that they are not preaching Christ at all, and that they are chilling towards Christ, that they are going away from Christ. And I know the common thing is, well, the Christ we were worshiping was the fundamentalist Christ. It wasn't the real Christ. Yeah, but you just said it. It wasn't the real Christ. So why are you abandoning Christ altogether? And I think there's so much danger here. And it's
so that's not really deconstruction then.
No, it's just,
yeah.
And so I think, and they start joking about Jesus.
I would call it destruction.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Agreed.
It's destruction. They're just lobbing grenades, or they're taking a jackhammer to the foundations of their belief systems and pulverizing them to dust. There is a difference between what growth and dismantling or disassembling aspects of our faith and growing them and building them into a more Christ-like and more beautiful image.
Do you remember going to school and there were some teachers that were mature, kind, and they saw through the pain of kids and had a deeper compassion, empathy? Then there were the other teachers, maybe younger, that were new and following the rules and the rule book, and no, you got to learn this way. And they were harsh. They didn't care about the kids. They cared about the lessons. And you can tell them apart in a heartbeat, right?
Right.
So in this lens, then in my mind, I'm hearing that those who are looking like Jesus, I would trust them to listen to a little bit more. If they don't look like Jesus, run.
That's good. That's good. And, you know, I heard this term. I'm a fantasy football nut. I am a fantasy. My son and I, we are addicts. I'm almost ashamed to admit this. I listen to a fantasy football network probably 3 or 4 hours a day when I'm driving, when I'm doing this. It's all about fantasy football. And I listened to a guy named the Guru. He's a fantasy guru. His name's John Hansen. And he's just so funny. I mean, it's a great, but he used a term the other day that really got me thinking. And the term, he's talking about Carson Wentz, the quarterback. I think he used to be the Eagles quarterback, and then he was for Indianapolis last year. But he said, if Carson would just stop playing hero ball. All right. And I said, hero ball, huh? So I looked up in the Urban Dictionary what hero ball was. And it's really started off with basketball. But here's what the definition is. It's a style of basketball played by a person with average or mediocre talent who nonetheless believes he is the second coming of Michael Jordan. It involves lots of ball hogging, mindless spinning and jumping, and taking a bunch of highly contested fadeaway jumpers that almost never go in.
Wow.
Well, I started thinking about some of this deconstruction. Some of these guys and girls are playing hero ball. They're just gyrating around. They're just making careless, reckless statements, aiming at more and more controversy. It's as though they think they're being judged by the controversial shots they're making. And it never goes in the hoop. I mean, it never goes in the hoop, you know, and the hoop that we're all shooting for is this Christ be made preeminent, that they may know Christ. You know, that they may fellowship, that they may be led by his Spirit in all things, that they may be quickened by his Spirit, that they may be blessed by his Spirit, that they may merge with his Spirit and be prompted by his Spirit and toward his Spirit and from his Spirit. And all these things, that's the hoop. And yet you will never, and all these guys controversial post, all they do is say what's wrong. They mock, they exaggerate, they caricature, they don't give respect to the other side, and then they get hypersensitive if they get criticized. And I just think it's theological hero ball. And I think when we start just trying to sound controversial so that people will look at us, and we'll look how brave a thing that was he just said. Well, if it's not exalting Christ or orbiting around Christ, then it's a poor, it's a poorly conceived shot, and it's just trying to, make themselves look better. And I posted on this the other night, but at the end of it, what I thought to myself, I said, oh dear God, I can actually see myself having done that before.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I said, oh God, because that's one way to know if you're really hearing Jesus. He will direct you to your own eye. And especially when I was younger, I mean, I would do that. I would ball hog, and give me the ball, and I'd want to take it, and I didn't need to pass it off. I was going to drive to the hoop. I mean, I was that way on the basketball court, and I was bad. They used to call me Ground Jordan because I couldn't jump, and it was an insult instead of Air Jordan. And I always stuck my tongue out. But I've always done that. That's another story. Even when I play pool, I stick my tongue out. But anyway, it's just. I lost my train of thought there.
Well,
take over.
Sure. Well, Jesus did that with his disciples. That's, to me, a model leader. And I was just thinking of mentorship as you were talking there, because I wonder how many individuals have no mentor. There were young individuals that were coming into the grace message as I was growing up, and some had no mentors to guide and have conversations with. So they would just spill all their theology. By the way, don't do that. Don't process your theology publicly until you've wrestled with it privately. I've got some really good mentors in my life that have modeled that. And regardless of where we're at in our relationship, they modeled something really important, and I've never forgotten it. And so I think we might need better mentors around too. Your mentor should not be your mentor should not be your buddies.
That goes back to that discipleship, right? Where you want people who are further along ahead of you in the journey, maybe not right beside you, because when you're right beside you, that guy might turn left. The other guy right beside you may turn right. You don't know which way. Having somebody on the milestone ahead of you or more that you're kind of, okay, that's safe. There's no landmines on this path.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And kind of, and you help avoid that destruction, not deconstruction, but destruction, right? We don't want to napalm all of our theology. That said, I think what Richard and I are talking about here are really the opposite ends of this very broad, huge spectrum of options. And that's that you said that right at the beginning, Mike. It's not one thing anymore. This isn't, no matter what term we use, deconstruction, discipleship, growth, progressivism, and it's not one thing. It is this myriad of things, and we're all getting lumped in sometimes with the worst common denominators. Regardless of what you think that may be, what I may think that may be, I think that the evangelical world who has a desperation, it's obvious. You're seeing it in the numbers. I saw a statistic today that 49% of people who still consider themselves Christians no longer attend any local church. 49% who still claim the faith of Christianity are done with effectively the institute. That's up 20-something% since 2008. I mean, it's crazy numbers. There's something going on in that institutional thing that's unhealthy.
It's a tomb.
It's unhealthy.
There's no life in it.
And it's clear as day if you just look at what's happening, right? So that there's a need for that message of what, has been heavily influenced by Calvinism, neo-Calvinism, right? Western theology, whatever you want to call it, Augustinianism, all that stuff it's got some toxicity in it. And it has to be discipled out of there, or it's got to be deconstructed and reconstructed. But nuking it is other extreme. And when you see people nuking it, these people that are beholden to that get hypersensitive, and they're going to build bigger walls. They're going to be stronger defenses to try and keep what power they believe they have and maintain it controlled as long as they can. And that's the dichotomy we're dealing with. You're dealing with people that are grounded on one side, and there's people who are just going wild on the other side and destroying everything. So the fortifications become stronger over here, the weapons become stronger over here, and this war is not really finding And there's innocent people in the middle, right? I mean,
Is it a swapping of absolutes, do you think?
absolutely.
Yeah, I think too that Martin Luther King said if you stay silent, while something is wrong is going on, you become complicit in it. And that's not always the case, but I love the courage that he said when he said that. And see, I think what needs to happen, at least on one level, is I don't want to be divisive, but at the same time, I think people are assuming when they see a sarcastic, kind of blowhardy, condescending, arrogant, controversial spirit in this thing that's attacking, and we stand by and we don't at least try to distance ourselves from it, that we try to say, well, that's not the stream we're coming from. It's okay to say we're in a different stream. There's nothing wrong with that. And I think people are going to, I guess I'm just challenging myself, but challenging us, challenging whoever wants to hear it, that we need to say, well, wait a minute, I don't bear witness with that. I don't like the presentation of it. I don't bear spiritual witness with it. Ultimately, at the end of the day, that's what we're supposed to be going by, is our spiritual witness. And I don't hear these guys preach Jesus at all. And he's the most they might ever say is Jesus didn't say that, or Jesus didn't do that. But there's more to Jesus than that. There is this living God thing that's right here in our midst, that's orchestrating our thoughts if we'll let him. And there's a metaphysic behind this too, that that we all believe in the spirit life, right? We believe in the spirit world. And we may not agree on the precise ontology of all the things that are there, but we know there's a different reality than what we're walking in now, a reality behind the reality, where there's wondrous things, mysterious things, awesome things, and things that make quantum physics, look like, romper room at elementary school. There's dynamics of the kingdom of God that are out there that are exciting and swirling about in the heavens. And there's a lack of poetic beauty, imagination, and relying on the on intuition and all these things, the mystery of life. And I am telling you that when I hear so many of these progressives get together and talk, there's no mystery to it. There's no thrill. There's no love. It's toxic, negative energy. And
I'll throw that gauntlet down, even in that quantum world. Throw it, there's an attention, it feels like, to take the mysterious, to take the poetic, to take the unbelievably beautiful and quantify it in a scientific formula that you can just, pop these quiffs and this wave, and I'm in control, and
Yeah.
The opposite of what the quantum world's telling us. It's saying there's this uncertain, swirling glory, and we can't grasp it, and we can never manipulate it, and we have to just relinquish everything unto it and trust its goodness over our own efforts. And we invert it. I see it all the time, people inverting the entire point.
So back to the quantum for fun. This is not in contradiction to what you're saying, but I think when we've been hearing from certain people explaining some of it at a regular education level, helping, like creating an understanding that we weren't made aware of, suddenly this quantum physics language gives language to some things that have been unexplained in Scripture.
Of course.
But the quantum in and of itself is not the gospel.
No,
but it's a way of explaining that fits in the quiver now, and I'm for it.
It's an allegory. It's an allegory. It's an allegory.
An allegory, exactly. But the second we also bring language, humans do this all the time. We bring rigidity. We bring formula.
We want to control it.
All these other things, religion, call it whatever. We bind ourselves to it, and all of a sudden we think we grasp it. And again, this isn't meant to sound rude. 90% of the people who I know that talk about quantum physics aren't quantum physicists. They're not. They're guys who've read a book or two. They've grasped a couple really elementary concepts, and then they run with them as kind of pseudo experts. And the reality is, the true quantum physicists, they're the ones that are laughable, that say, we don't understand this thing at all.
Yeah, I remember seeing, we may have talked about this before, but I remember seeing a quantum physicist talk, a famous one in the 70s and 80s, that was contacted by these musicians. I can't forget which, like the Doors. I don't think it was the Doors, but they were like the Doors, and they were getting all this quantum physics stuff, and they were trying to make it literal to the spirit realm. This is exactly how the spirit realm works. And the physicist said, well, you know, they had some really interesting ideas. It was interesting. And the interviewer said, well, did anything ever happen spiritually, you know, from it, you know? And he said, no, not really. But he said they had some, you know, applications. But I took it to mean that he was just talking about, you know, they were using it as an analog, you know, as an analogy of what things may be like in the spirit, like Jesus using parables. It's kind of like quantum physics on, you know, on that, but it's just to express another point, you know, behind on the spiritual level, and see, if we're not careful, then we can let that replace, you know, that becomes another thing of the word of faith, the way you were describing it, Bill. You know, you create your own reality. If you just observe it, it'll happen. Well, no, there's a lot more to it than that. I mean, it is an observer's universe, but come on.
Who's the primary observer?
Yeah.
Not me. Well, we're looking through a keyhole, right?
Yeah.
You're looking through a keyhole at one little glimpse of something that we have no possibility to fathom in our lifetimes, to the glory of the entirety of whatever that is behind that door. And it's beautiful that we have this, you know, tiny new vantage point. That's a cool thing. We get to see something that nobody ever has seen before. But at the same token, to act like we can and unfold and tell everything going on behind that door is a little bit arrogant. It really is.
And really, you know, the way Greg Boyd teaches it, you know, it says that what the universe, what it shows is at a subatomic level that there's uncertainty, you know, quantum uncertainty, and yet that we talk about like it's certain, you know, but
Exactly.
The whole thing, you know, his whole thing is using it as an allegory, you know, to kind of deconstruct predestination and you know, that sort of thing, that not everything is determined. But I guess all that by way of saying that, you know, as we've talked about in some of these last sessions, one of the things as I've gotten older, and I know y'all too, I don't have to be as precise. I don't even want to be as precise. That was when I was playing hero ball, I wanted to be precisely right. Exactly every A, B, C, D, E, subsection, that stuff. I wanted to be precisely right. And I had so crucified that need in me to be precisely right. I just want to be roughly right. I want to be I want to have a rough view of it that doesn't take me walking out on a branch until the branch breaks. You know, I just want to be on the solid, you know, next to the trunk of the tree. I want to be there sitting, knowing that this is the right branch I'm on. I don't have to walk out on it if it won't bear my weight, if I can't bear the weight of it.
Yeah. I agree. And Mike, just back to your point, I think, you know, quantum has given us this new language, and that has given us this ability then to reframe so many of those fundamental things that maybe were religious, right? And they open that door for so many people. And so I don't ever want to be overtly, you know, negative toward it, but I also see the pendulum swing to where it becomes its own religion itself, right?
But that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the way deconstruction has hijacked really good topics and took it too far.
But it's almost like we're still It's almost like we're still addicted to the religious, you know, fundamentalism. Mm-hmm. We just want new language. We want a new practice. We want a new set of beliefs. But at the end of the day, we still want to be fundamentally attached to that. And I actually got into that with somebody recently about fundamentalism / obsession. And he was like, yeah, obsession's still obsession. I was like, yeah, but I'm obsessed with Christ. And if that's wrong, if me being obsessed with Christ, then I'm okay not being right at this point in time, at least where some obsessed and possessed have the same root. I want to be possessed by the mind of Christ.
Yes.
Obsessed with seeing his face in all people and all things. If we're not obsessed with anything, we believe that, you know, we just need to detach. Well, now we're getting into a different philosophy of life and being all together. And that's not the preeminence of Christ.
And you were talking about discipleship earlier. You know, what I would add to that is that disciples, well, let me say it this way. Teachers should teach people that they don't need teachers. Okay. I mean, and John kind of says that, doesn't he? You have an anointing from the Holy One and you have no need of a man to teach you. And that doesn't mean early on we don't listen to others. Sure, there's fellowship and there's, if someone has a word, you yield to the one who's speaking under the inspiration of the Spirit. And sure, there's nothing wrong with having, models. I had many in my life that have followed me for a time, but not have followed me that I followed. I had 3 in particular, and they were like hand the baton off. It's like the Lord said, "This guy's kind of he's really excited about me, but he's kind of an idiot. So just keep handing the baton off. I'm going to cure him of his idiocy." And I'm still waiting for the final thing on it. But it is all about Christ, and he needs to become our major, and I will sit there and it's the same with you guys. I know you both know you well enough to know that the person you listen to more than anyone else is Jesus. The Jesus that lives inside of you, that he is your ultimate discipler. He is your teacher.
Yeah.
And I think a teacher teaches you and models for you how to hear the voice, how to be open and organic with the promptings of God. Dear Lord, if our teacher isn't teaching us that, we need a new teacher. And that's all the men would ever show me. I remember I used to have all these opinions that flared up when I was young. I was just baptized in the Spirit, and I was excited, and I wasn't going to put up with any unholiness and all this kind of stuff. And my older brother, Robert Whitlow, he's a Christian, fairly well-known Christian author. He would just kind of nod his head at me, and kind of let me run my zeal out. And then he would ask me a question here, and then he would show me an opposite spirit. And then when I would fall and stumble and do something stupid, he would show me incredible mercy. And I began to hear Jesus through him. And then that became a part of me, though, to help me recognize the voice that was within. And then, with these other 2 men that discipled me, it was the same thing. It's between the 3 of them. They each brought me a different component of Jesus's voice. But it's a voice I then internalized. It wasn't a voice. They didn't teach me doctrine. They taught me the voice.
Or dependency, right? Which
Yes.
we see so often.
Then let me bring this to a close with this question for you guys to respond to the person who may be afraid right now that they're in a spin cycle. They know the journey of unlearning they're on the right journey, but some of the voices are scary. What would you say to them? Because they're afraid of overrunning the base or making wrong choices. How would you respond to that? And I think we'll wrap up with that.
Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I think there's I guess 2 key variables. If you're becoming dependent on any one voice outside of the Holy Spirit of Jesus himself, then having a broader perspective of people who maybe you're listening to different perspectives from is healthy. Paul said in Thessalonians, test all things, hold on to the good. Right? That's one of the verses I've lived by. And there's a little scientific method in there, which is beautiful. But right. What is test all things? Hold on to the good. So is the goodness of Christ being exemplified by anything being taught? Or is dependency on a specific human being and their interpretation being taught? So, and you'll see this, and we've talked about this before, I won't get into it much. Is there this tribal hive mind growing where if you don't agree with the collective, then you're not loved and accepted the same way everybody else? Red flag. Mm-hmm. Immediate red flag. Is there mercy to have a counter perspective inside of this group, politically, theologically, and work through it together? Or is there just vitriol? If there's vitriol, then it's probably not a really healthy place, and it's maybe worthwhile to step back and start to reevaluate it and maybe listen to some new people that maybe you're not familiar with.
Yeah, I mean, this might be a time, I don't know that I've ever shared with the 2 of you, but I was actually in a cult for 2 years.
You've told me.
And it was a very legalistic cult, and that might be a conversation for another time. But I would say this, that anytime you encounter a group that basically says everything that's gone on before is wrong, this is the new truth of the day, you have to destroy the truth and tear down all the idols of what's gone before, and everyone's been wrong before, and this whole institutional thing is horrible, and it's got to come down. We have to attack it. Everything is wrong. I'm telling you, that's a cultic view. There are good things that have happened. Jesus spoke to me when I was at my most religious institutional surrounding. He spoke to me in this cult. He walked me through it and past it. Praise God, I was there a short period of time. I often looked at it like it was a boot camp for me to learn what legalism was, and because they stayed in the Old Testament, and what they did is they condemned every other form of Christianity, and basically drew it that if you leave them, you lose your salvation. If you leave this particular group. So what I would say to people is, there's a passage in Ecclesiastes where it says, with your left hand, hold on to what you've been given. With your right hand, reach for something new. Continue to reach, use both hands, but hold on to what you've been given. And, no matter how somebody may be embedded in some religious, what do we want to call it? An incubator, or maybe something where there's no real growth going on, or not much growth. There is some growth going on, and there is some life. And because that comes between people, believers. And is it hampered by the institution? Sure. Is it hampered by other things? Sure it is. But you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. You can't throw the baby out with the bathwater, and just hold on to the good things that are there. And don't let any sarcasm, anyone scoff everything I believe. Well, all three of us have seen commentators who literally one day are preaching Christ, and the next day they're saying, I've renounced my faith. And they talk just as much, like Bill said. They don't pull off the side of the road and, catch their breath and reevaluate and test what this new thing they've suddenly renounced. They just get louder and they get more abrasive. I wouldn't want somebody that just, you talk, well, what about people that are following that type of model, and then they just renounce Christianity one day, and then they keep preaching. I mean, it's jolting, and it's like Mike, what you said earlier. Your deconstruction, you gotta, hey, do it for yourself. Take some time. Stop entertaining. Stop playing hero ball with it. Stop having to put the most controversial post, and slow down
and stop having and there's people that are the leaders, and there are people that follow every controversial post. So you don't have to be on that end of the equation either. Take some time to begin to look for the fruits of the Spirit. Because at the end of the day, if it's not love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, kindness, self-control, I think I got them all. There are no laws against these things, right? If that's the heart of the community or the temporary leadership in place of you, stick with it for a season. But if it's also not growing you to be able to hear, just like you said, Richard, from the heart of Christ within you, ultimately to pass through confusion to this place of what I call being a professor, right? I don't believe in confession. I believe in profession, right? I don't confess my sins. I profess the righteousness of Christ, right?
Yeah.
We become professors, right? PhDs in this glory of grace and the goodness of God. And when you get there, you kind of start to lose the need to have that mentor anymore. And you will find yourself becoming one who begins to mentor others, which is exactly the whole point of discipleship.
Mentors should be those who don't want to mentor. It's just an organic relationship.
Yep.
Ooh, that could smart somebody. Hold on. Oh, I just processed that.
A lot of truth in that.
So you can sign up for my new mentor program at All right. Well, thanks for the chat for this one. This was really healthy. Maybe we'll continue in the next one, or do a step into this and continue and then veer off. I have another thought in a few minutes, but thanks for this conversation, and we're going to do part 2 next time. All right. Oh, wow. I hope you enjoyed that. Hoo-wee. I don't know. This doesn't get old. I love this discussion. I love talking through these issues. Couple of comments. I want to read Mary Nye's because I thought it was really good. I wasn't able to share it on the screen at the bottom because the way I'm live streaming today through OBS. If I was on Restream, I could do that, but I can't from OBS. She writes, "For me, it has simply been a journey, and in it all, I have in the questioning become aware of the oneness. to the point of hearing the words occasionally, not a good idea, but if you go, I am going with you. Absolute truth. And then Thomas Germain says, us versus them is a big red flag. And that one's tough. It's true. Thomas, you're right. What about no belief at all? That's a good question. And, I think everybody believes something. Sorry. Everyone lives their lives based on their belief of how they, of their concept of who they think God is, of what they think the Bible is, of what they think the church is. Everybody's living from their own think. It's just is. And to have something new and exciting and, I'm bored with this now and I need to move on to the next. Well, there are some people that get bored, almost like spiritual ADHD, and there's nothing solid. And yet people follow them and they make themselves out to be leaders. Come follow me because I'm going nowhere. I think it's a mess. I hope people have a little more wisdom, but you know what? It is what it is. And it's like, we're not in charge of anyone else's journey. Just use the wisdom that God has given you. Each of us has been given that. Sandy from the UK writes, really enjoyed this. Thanks, Mike and the team. Yeah, thank you. I love it. I love hearing that this is actually helpful or encouraging. If nothing else, this is a fellowship. Still Growing in Grace is really a connection of many folks watching from different places and commenting. Howard Sorrento in BC, good morning to you. Love this. Sandy writes, I love sharing this good news with others too. Thanks once again. And I can't stop. I love doing this. And these conversations are getting bigger, wider, and deeper all the time. Part 2 is next week. I think you're going to love part 2. It's even better than today's conversation because once in a while we get going, right? And I don't want it to be a really long video. So that's why those conversations are split. But anyway, Thomas, you said, what about no belief at all? I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that comment, but there are people that will come to a place of no belief. What does that mean? Well, it's not up to the believer to go convince them. You don't know the journey they're on. I believe the light of Christ shines through all people, and it's not going to look religious all the time. So even though people say I've deconstructed God or Jesus and they don't believe anything anymore, well, that's fine. They can say that. Quit talking to the Christian community then, because now you're just being ticked off. Instead, I think those individuals still have light in them. I still see Christ in them. And I have a hunch some have been really burned by Christian people. And usually that's a pain that they're speaking from. Just speaking from experience and from friends I have known. Dan, oh my goodness, from Florida. Yeah, thanks for being in Florida, buddy. I got ice rain right now, just starting. Dude, thanks for chiming in. I was thinking of texting you. Go back and listen. It's been good. Say hi to Shelly, please. It's so cool that you're chiming in. Yay! I'm using the JetBlue Ice Melt in about 5 minutes. There's a plug. Oh my goodness, yeah. All right, I got to run. You guys have a fantastic day. Look forward to part 2 next Wednesday morning, 8 a.m. I think you're going to love the conversation. It's deep and wonderful. You guys have yourself a great rest of the week. Join me next time on Still Growing in Grace for more good news. Enjoy previous episodes by downloading our podcast at growingingrace.ca. You can also visit hopefellowshipycc.com to find our service times and location. If this show has been an encouragement to you, please consider making a donation today at growingingrace.ca and help us keep spreading this good news. Thank you again for tuning in to Still Growing in Grace.